What's good, everyone? This is Monaro and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be going over chapters 55 to 65. Hope you enjoy. Daenerys has not returned. Many fear her dead. The Dothraki are searching for her across the Worm River. Strong Belwaz is still in mortal danger from the poisoned locusts that he ate during the reopening of the fighting pits, and Sir Barristen Selmy does not trust the Blue Graces that are taking care of him now. Jogo, Daario Naharis, Admiral Grolio, and Hero of the Unsullied all remain prisoners of the Yunkai. Sir Barristan is told by Hisdar Zolorak's seneschal, Resnak Moresnak, that Hisdar wishes to receive his Yunkish guests without Barristan there, essentially removing the duties of the head of the Queensguard. Of all of Dany's servants, only Missandei remains within the royal apartments, although she too has been replaced. The Unsullied have been slighted by Hisdar, and the Shafe-Pates might as well be more loyal to Skahaz Mokandak than to Hisdar, so the king lets himself be defended by pit fighters while he prepares for the peace discussions with the Yunkai. Meanwhile, disease has spread throughout Meereen, both in the city itself and among the Yunkishmen camped outside it, despite the best of Dany's earlier efforts. Due to this, the streets are extremely quiet. Barristan is in a depressed and reflective state, wondering how he got here, how he lost Dany like he lost her father and brother, as well as King Robert. He remembers how he ran too slowly after Dany, pondering if Daario would have run faster. As Drogon took to the air with Dany on his back, spears and crossbow bolts were targeted at him, wounding him. In reply, he loosed his fire upon them, killing 214 people and wounding 3 times as many. Rumor has it that the Yunkai sieging Meereen have mounted scorpions around the city in an attempt at slaying Drogon should he return. As he thinks that she may be flying home, Missandei appears behind him. She tells him that Dany would not leave without them. She also says that Skahaz Mokandak, the Shafe-Pate, wishes to meet with him secretly. Barristan agrees to a meeting at the stables at sunset. There, the Shafe-Pate says that the sons of the Harpy poisoned the locust that Belwaz ate, intending to kill Dany, that Volantis has dispatched its fleets, and that Hisdar means to open Meereen's gates for them. Skahaz asks him to speak to Grey Worm, as he will trust Barristan and support them. Selmy agrees to conspire with the Shafe-Pate against Hisdar and to attack the unsuspecting Yunkai before the fleet from Volantis can arrive to take the city and enslave all of Dany's people. He does this on the condition that Hisdar's guilt can be proven, and Barristan thinks to himself that he will kill the man personally. Barristan says that he will go speak to Grey Worm. Victarion Greyjoy is anchored near the Isle of Cedars, right outside Slaver's Bay, to find Daenerys Targaryen. He was sent by his brother King Euron Greyjoy to command the Iron Fleet and bring Dany to him, but Victarion means to take her to wife himself. Victarion's shield hand was hurt fighting Talbot Siri in the Battle of the Shield Islands, and the wound has festered. Maester Curran has had little success treating the wound. Victarion learns that the strong Volantene fleet is on their way to Meereen too, while his own fleet was scattered on their way and only half of them came back together. The 54th ship to arrive, the Grief, has happened upon the Red Priest Makaro, who was swept overboard the Salisbury Quran when Tyrion traveled her to Meereen. He claims to have seen in the flames that Victarion would die unless the priest helped him. Makaro succeeds in healing him, and Victarion has the maester killed and makes for Meereen. Yazan Zo Kagaz is dying of the bloody flux. A healer explained to Sweets that the only help for Yazan is good, clean water. Nurse, also got the bloody flux and died the night before after Tyrion gave him dogtail soup with silver mushrooms in the broth. Tyrion asks Scar, a soldier slave in Yazan's ownership, to send 2 men to get fresh, clean water for Yazan. Scar refuses because he will not take orders from a slave, even though he himself is a slave. He tells Tyrion to get the water himself with Penny. Tyrion asks for the mule and the cart to get the water. Scar refuses but gives them Jorah Mormont to help get the water. The 3 of them travel through the camp to the nearest well south and west of the Trebuchet, the Harridan. On the way, Tyrion sees defenses being built to defend against the possible return of Drogon, although he knows that most of these will prove useless against dragons. Tyrion knows that a dragon's eyes are its only weak spot, and not the underbelly or throat as old wives' tales claim. While waiting at the well, they hear the latest news and rumors from other slaves who are discussing the event at Daznak's pit. It is argued whether Daenerys Targaryen flew off on the dragon or died trying. Tyrion states she did not die because her body was not found. He briefly thinks on the moment when he almost revealed his identity to her, only to stop out of fear Barristen Selmy would prejudice Daenerys against him out of contempt for House Lannister. After getting the water, they are supposed to return to their camp, but Tyrion leads them to the tents of the Second Sons instead. He knows that right now, while Yazan is on the verge of death, is the best time for them to try and escape the grasp of the slavers. When they get there, Tyrion is recognized as the dwarf that Brown Ben Plum wished to buy, so they are brought to the captain. There, he reveals that he knows that Ben Plum knows who Tyrion really is, and that Tyrion knows that Plum is a Westerman of House Plum, and that the dragons are fond of him. He implies that he knows more about Plum's lineage than even Plum himself, and that Plum may have more Targaryen blood than he thinks. Ben Plum then recognizes Jorah Mormont, and Tyrion convinces Ben Plum to let him and Mormont join the Second Sons instead of killing him in order to win a lordship from Cersei Lannister. Tyrion suggests they play a game of Savas as they continue talking. Tormund Giantsbane, along with over 3,000 wildlings, passed the wall at Castle Black. The price for their entry, which was negotiated between Jon and Tormund, is that the wildlings will yield all valuables so that they can be sold for food, as well as 100 boys as hostages. Initially, 2 girls are included in the 100 hostages, although Jon spots them and they are replaced by 2 new boys. Tormund voluntarily includes his own son as a hostage as a sign of good faith. Jon decides to take him on as his own squire. While watching the wildlings pass through the wall, Jon and Tormund speak of many things. Jon mentions that Melisandre burned the horn of Joramun that Mance and the wildlings were supposedly going to use to break down the wall. Tormund tells Jon that although they did find the huge horn in the Skirling Pass, it is not actually the true horn of Joramun, or they would have used it when they assaulted the wall. Jon, confused, tries to decide whether it was Mance that lied to him or Tormund lying to him now about the authenticity of the horn. The rear guard of the wildlings with Tormund includes a warg who is accompanied by his boar. Ghost and this boar seems to be on edge around each other, and it is mentioned that they should be restrained while the wildlings are staying at Castle Black. Most of the wildlings will be relocated in the coming weeks. Later, Jon receives a letter from Carter Pike saying that he is stranded at Hardhome and calls for help. He also reveals that the Braavosi captains on loan from Tychos would only allow wildling women and children aboard their ships, and that the Woods Witch has taken to calling them slavers. This explains Arya's report that the wildlings from Hardhome had been captured by slavers as narrated in The Blind Girl. He also says there are dead things both in the woods and the water, lending a great deal of urgency to his message. Sir Barristen attends Hizdahr zo Loraq's court under the unease that Daenerys Targaryen's absence brings. The Brazen Beasts now have a new commander, the king's cousin, Marghaz zo Loraq. Raznak Moraznak keeps a strong voice in court, counseling the new king. Marghaz is now acclaimed as a hero after his fight against Drogon. Sir Barristan notices the presence of Quentyn Martell and his 2 Dornish companions at court, remembering his former companionship to Prince Lewin Martell, his Kingsguard colleague and also Quentyn's uncle. He considers the possibility that the poison locust that Strong Belwaz ate might have been meant for Hizdahr as part of a plot to trick Daenerys into marrying Quentyn, given that another of the prince's uncles was notorious for poisoning those who got in his way. Before he makes up his mind on the matter, 3 wise masters, envoys from Yunkai, arrive, along with their sellsword Bloodbeard, to talk to Hizdahr. They show Admiral Grolio's severed head as a gesture of intimidation, claiming his death as payback for the death of Yurkaz Zoyunzak, who was trampled to death during the panic when Drogon attacked the fighting pits. Sir Barristan reminds King Hizdahr that Yurkaz's death was accidental, while the Yunkai representatives free 3 of the 6 remaining hostages. They demand that the dragons be destroyed as a condition for the release of the last 3 hostages. Barristan is also suspicious of Hizdahr's lack of reaction, given that all 3 of the Westerosi kings he served under, Aerys, Robert, and even the supposedly weak Jaehaerys, would have responded to such an insult by ordering every member of the Yunkish delegation killed. He also believes Bloodbeard is trying to start violence in order to get the plunder the peace has denied him. As the court is ended for further deliberation of the King's Council, Sir Barristan decides to counsel the Dornishmen. Despite appearing weak, the king has taken notice of Quentyn, and Sir Barristan considers it dangerous for them to remain in Meereen. He advises them to return immediately to Dorne, going as far as offering the coin for the trip, and reveals that there was an attempt at poisoning either Daenerys or her consort during the fighting pit's reopening. Quentyn's shocked reaction reassures Sir Barristan that the Dornishmen had no part in the poisoning, but he still counsels Quentyn and his companions to leave Meereen and return to Dorne, for he considers his prospects of marriage unpromising and his situation dangerous. Garrus Drinkwater reports having spoken to Beans, Books, and Old Bone Bill. In exchange for some gold, the 3 members of the Windblown agreed to tell the Tattered Prince that the 3 Dornishmen would like to meet. Despite successfully delivering the message, Drinkwater insists the group should heed Barristan Selmy's warning and leave Meereen for Volantis and ultimately return to Dorne. Quentyn wants to leave for Westeros as well, but fears arriving empty-handed as he worries he will disappoint his father and Lord Ironwood and face mockery by the Sand Snakes should he do so. Quentyn tells his companions they can leave without him, but they choose to stay. Denzel Dons finds Quentyn to discuss the terms for the meeting. Denzel tells the Dornish prince to find a door marked with a purple lotus near the spice market at sunset the next day. Quentyn agrees and tells Denzel that the Tattered Prince can bring 2 men, as he will be accompanied by Drinkwater and Archibald. The 3 Dornishmen leave to meet the Tattered Prince an hour before sunset, bearing weapons. On their way, Archibald and Garrus find out that they might face violence or other retribution from the Tattered Prince for their betrayal. Quentyn agrees it is possible, but they continue walking. The three then discuss waiting for Daenerys' return and the possibility of killing Hizdahr zo Loraq to allow Quentyn to marry her. Quentyn fears that his friends have lost sight of why they are in Meereen, for Daenerys' dragons, and points out that he has Targaryen blood and he can therefore tame at least one of the remaining two. Garrus balks at his plan and points out that the dragons will not care about his lineage. The prince argues the plan is necessary to grant meaning to the deaths of Cletus and Willem Wells and to please his father. The three eventually find a door marked with a purple lotus and enter a large but dilapidated building. They are greeted by an old woman who takes them to a dim cellar where Pretty Maris, Danzo Dan, Kago Corpse Killer, and the tattered prince await them. Quentyn is wary as the prince is wearing mail and has brought one man more than they had agreed upon. Quentyn expresses his displeasure at the extra bodyguard, but the prince points out that Maris is not a man. The prince remains resentful of the Dornishmen's betrayal, as it resulted in the imprisonment of several of his best men. To persuade the prince to join their side, Quentyn promises to double the amount paid to the Windblown by the Yunkai once they arrive in Dorne, but the tattered prince is unmoved. Quentyn then reveals that he plans to steal one of the two remaining dragons in Meereen, and the prince names Pentos the price of his allegiance. Jon Connington and the Golden Company have landed at Cape Wrath in Westeros and managed to seize Griffin's Roost and other small castles by taking them unawares. The taking of Griffin's Roost was quite easy. The Golden Company only lost 4 men in the attack. Any raven trying to leave the castle was shot down, followed shortly by the castle's maester being thrown from his tower. After that, what was left of the garrison surrendered. Taking his leave of the Golden Company officers by claiming to be going to pray at his father's tomb in the castle sept, Jon instead goes to the battlements and reminisces over the time Rhaegar visited his home and seemed impressed with Connington lands. Jon then reflects on what happened next to his house. After Aerys exiled Jon, furious at his failure to stop Robert, the lands and titles went to his cousin, Ronald Connington, who had been Jon's castellan while he was in King's Landing. But after the end of Robert's rebellion, King Robert stripped Ronald of his lordship and gave most of House Connington's lands to houses that had fought for him. Jon, however, is glad that he will not have to fight his deceased cousin or Ronald's son Ronnet, who is away fighting in the Riverlands to reclaim Griffin's Roost, not wanting to celebrate his return by killing one of his own kin. Nor does he blame his cousin any longer for taking advantage of his downfall, since as far as Jon is concerned, the one responsible for House Connington's downfall is himself. Jon muses, then turned to where he lost everything, Stony Sept. Taking over pursuit of Robert from the Tyrells after the Battle of Ashford, Jon cornered the rebel in the town and began searching for him. But the search yielded nothing, as the townfolk were protecting Robert, hiding him and constantly moving him. All of Connington's efforts to find Robert, offering bribes for information, taking hostages, threats, and pardons, got him nowhere, and the delay brought time for Eddard Stark and Hoster Tully to bring a rebel army to Robert's rescue. The rebels attacked Connington's men at the same time Robert and his followers emerged from the town in a counterattack, and the ensuing battle ended in a rebel victory. For years, Jon reflected that he insisted he did all he could, until Miles Toyne disabused him of that notion by pointing out that Tywin Lannister would have burned the Stony Sept to the ground to kill Robert, then offered pardons to Stark and Tully when they arrived to convince them to give up and go home. Connington, however, knew this would mean killing everyone in the town, and he both didn't want to be branded a murderer and wanted the glory of slaying Robert for himself. Jon reflects that his failure at Stony Sept led to Rhaegar's death at the Trident, and vows not to fail Prince Aegon as he failed his father. Rejoining his fellows, Jon takes note of the captives, including Ronet's brother, sister, and bastard son. Most of the castle staff swear loyalty to him. Connington pays a visit to Haldon, who is trying to interpret where most of the Golden Company, scattered along the coast by the Volantene ships that transported them from Essos, to send a message to Dorne Martell to inform him that his nephew Aegon is alive, in order to gain the Dornish alliance. Jon reflects that he could not have expected loyalty from these men if he had reclaimed his home while Robert and Renly still held the Stormlands. Haldon also argues that they need to offer incentives to convince recalcitrant lords to join them, as most of the gold and land will go to the Golden Company officers that was taken from their ancestors. Haldon suggests offering the hands of Prince Aegon and Jon himself for marriage alliances. Jon, however, refuses, in the face of his illness and his insistence that Aegon must be free to wed Daenerys Targaryen if she returns home. In his chambers, Jon privately treats his grayscale with wine. If his condition became known, he fears that any lord still loyal to House Connington would abandon him. 4 days later, Prince Aegon arrives along with Duck, the first member of his Kingsguard. Jon recalls his disapproval of that choice and how he argued with Aegon that they should leave places in his Kingsguard open to both warriors of great renown or the younger sons of important lords to add luster to their cause. But Aegon refused, saying all he wanted from his Kingsguard was their willingness to die defending him, pointing out that Jon's criteria for the Kingsguard perfectly fits the Kingslayer. Jon informs him that his man planned to take Storm's End in 10 days. He had refused the suggestion of the Golden Company officers to make an alliance with Stannis Baratheon, who holds it, arguing that Stannis is Robert's brother, a rival claimant to the throne, and leagues away from them with nothing to offer. Aegon agrees to this plan and tells him that he intends for the siege to go forward with one change. Aegon will lead the attack himself. Asha Greyjoy is still a prisoner of Stannis Baratheon at the Crofters' village between the lakes, being guarded by Alysanne Mormont. While they thought they would be only 3 days from Winterfell, the snow have kept them stranded for 19 days. Food has become a major concern. The supply of fish from the lake has been diminishing. They have already been relying on their dying horses as a source of food for a while now, and foraging has brought little results. Some men have begun to resort to cannibalism. 4 men from House Peasbury were caught eating parts of a dead man from House Fell. There are growing tensions between the Queen's men that Stannis brought with him from Dragonstone and the other people present, both local northerners and the King's men that Stannis brought from Dragonstone and the Storm's lands with him. Fueling those tensions, Sir Godfrey Faring the Giant Slayer, Sir Corlys Penny, and Sir Clayton Suggs are about to burn the 4 cannibals in sacrifice for R'hllor, hoping to stoke the snowfall. Northerners Artos Flint and Big Bucket Wool express dislike of the sacrifice. Asha has noted that Clayton Suggs is a cruel man and fears that he may eventually turn against her. Stannis himself has been retreating to a tower roof with a perennial flame for 4 days, since his squire Brian Faring was given a funeral burning after dying from the cold. He returns now, along with Queen's man Sir Richard Corp and Carhol's castellan, Arnulf Karstark, whose men joined theirs 8 days past. There are rumors that Arnulf may hold Winterfell in Stannis' behest if they are successful at retaking the castle. Stannis authorizes the sacrifice and watches it until its end. Sir Justin Massey remains close to Asha and protects her from the worst of Clayton Suggs' threats. He also reveals that he is no longer a true believer in R'hllor and hints that he knows more than he is telling. Justin offers to guard Asha for a while, relieving Ali Mormont from that duty. The two of them eat some roasted horse in the hall. Stannis' knights are, however, lost for a lack of options, knowing that they are likely to die soon no matter what they do, since they have no food, nor are they in any condition to fight Roose Bolton's forces at Winterfell. Talk is tense and frustrated, and eventually Justin leaves the hall. Attempting to follow him, Asha finds Clayton Suggs instead. He threatens her, but the two of them are surprised to find that rotters are coming from Stannis' encampment. Assuming that this is an attack from the Boltons and Freys, Clayton commands Asha to warn the others while he alone attempts to delay the riders. But there is no immediate danger, for the riders are not hostile. It is instead a group of Tycho Nestoris, representative of the Iron Bank of Bravos, with 2 men of the Night's Watch and the 7 Iron Men that he ransomed from Sybil Lock. Asha recognizes Christopher Botley from among them. The group has come by way of Winterfell, where they found Crowfoot Umber beating drums and blowing horns, and have brought Theon and Jane from Winterfell. Jane's nose is black from frostbite, and no one has referred to her by name yet, so it is not clear whether Tychos' group knows that she is not Arya Stark. Asha fails to recognize Theon, who looks decades older than she knows him to be. Theon, however, reveals his identity to Asha, much to her shock. Victarion Greyjoy continues on his way to Meereen. Despite his crew's unease at Moqorro's continued presence, Victarion insists that the Red God will help them on their journey. Though his arm and hand are now burned, they are stronger than ever. He says, "2 gods are with me now. No foe can stand between 2 gods." The Iron Fleet captures a number of trading ships, Giscari Dawn, Dove, 2 unnamed ships that he renames as Ghost and Shade, an unnamed Fat Gallus, an unnamed trading galley, an unnamed fishing ketch, and a slaver galley named the Willing Maiden. Moqorro's prophecies are instrumental in the capture of these fleets. As a show of his appreciation, Victarion burns 7 Lyseni bed slaves as a tribute to both the drowned god and R'hllor. After this sacrifice, a favorable wind rises for the Iron Fleet, which now numbers 60 ships with the new additions. That night, Victarion allows Moqorro to inspect the dragon horn given to him by his brother Euron. Moqorro reads the Valyrian glyphs displayed on the horn to Victarion, telling him that the horn's name is written as "I am Dragonbinder." Moqorro goes on to explain that no mortal man can blow the horn and live. However, he states that who blows the hell horn matters not. The dragon will come to the horn's master. You must claim the horn with blood. After a gathering of 11 faceless men, Arya is interrogated by Plagueface and deemed ready for her first assassination. The kindly man informs Arya that she will need a new face for this job, since Cat of the Canals would be easily recognized. He and the waif lead her down into a hidden chamber deep under the House of Black and White. The walls are covered with mask-like faces, which Arya realizes are the faces of people who die at the House of Black and White. The face chosen for Arya is that of a young girl who was abused to the point of permanent disfigurement and came to the house seeking death. Arya's blood is used to soften the leathery mask into living skin, which then bonds to her head and becomes her new face. The kindly man warns Arya that she will suffer the nightmares of the girl whose face she has taken, but only for a time. His promise proves to be true, and that night Arya dreams of the abuse that was suffered by the girl at the hands of her father. The next day, Arya is given her first target. He is an elderly man running an insurance scam at a shipyard. The target is always accompanied by 2 guards, and the kindly man has forbidden her to kill anyone other than her target, so Arya must stalk the man for several days to find an opportunity. She eventually dispatches him by slipping a poisoned coin into the purse of his client, knowing the man selling insurance will bite into the coin to test its legitimacy. The kindly man is pleased by her success and raises her to the status of an acolyte. He gives her a black and white robe to wear while at the house and restores her face. However, the next day she is to take a new face and leave for her first apprenticeship with someone named Izembaro. Cersei is forced to walk from the Great Sept of Baelor to the Red Keep as atonement for her confessed sins. It is the only way to escape the Sept, as her uncle Kevin will not oppose the faith, and Cersei does not have enough friends in the Sept to risk a trial like Marjorie Tyrell. Her only hope is a trial by combat. Cersei feels fear at the thought of being paraded through the streets naked, remembering the violence the smokefolk caused during the riot, but reassures herself that no harm will come to her. When morning arrives, her jailers arrive with a group of silent sisters who strip Cersei naked and shave her of every hair on her body. Cersei is then led by an escort of warrior sons, among them her cousin Lancel, much to Cersei's disgust, to the courtyard, where Cersei finds herself standing close to the spot where Eddard Stark was executed. As the Septas accompanying her announce her sins to the watching crowd, Cersei muses first on how Joffrey undid all of her plans and the work of Varys and Littlefinger. Had he done as he was told and sent Stark to the wall, Ned and his knowledge of Cersei's incest would have been removed, and the Lannisters would have had peace with Robb Stark, a hostage in the form of Sansa, and the freedom to deal with Stannis and Renly Baratheon. But instead, Joffrey demanded Stark's head, and after that, everything fell apart. Cersei's thoughts then turned to memories of how her father did away with her grandfather's mistress after his death, having her stripped naked and marched through the streets of Lannisport. But Cersei insists to herself she will not be broken and humiliated so easily. Cersei is then forced to strip before the crowd and walk to the Red Keep. At first, Cersei walks with dignity, ignoring the insults and worse, such as rotten vegetables and a cat carcass, the crowd throw at her. But as the walk continues and the insults grow worse, mocking her faded beauty and the signs of age on her body, Cersei struggles to maintain her composure. As she walks, Cersei begins to hallucinate, seeing faces of others in the crowd. Her father frowning, Ned and Sansa Stark, along with Sansa's wolf, staring accusingly at her, Tyrion laughing at her, and finally, the face of Maggie the Frog intoning her prophecy. "Queen you shall be, until there comes another, younger and more beautiful, to cast you down and take all you hold most dear." At this, Cersei breaks down in tears and runs for the Red Keep, collapsing as soon as she staggers into the courtyard. Kevin Lannister orders her covered up and removed, at which point Cersei is picked up by an 8-foot-tall giant of a man, clad in the armor and white cloak of a Kingsguard knight. Qyburn appears and introduces Cersei to his champion, Sir Robert Strong, and she is most pleased. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you for stopping by and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to come back for more. Again, thank you for watching. Bye.